Hey y'all, my name is Shawn Aaron, he, him, his, and welcome to day 10 of my 30-day reflection. Today I will be reflecting on what it means to live by values that do not do you harm. And so today's episode is rooted in care, not control, in softness and not in shame. So as a Black trans man, I have been shaped by Black queer feminism, and I'm learning to live by love, by liberation, and on purpose. So if you are new to Black queer feminism, just know it is a framework that says we all deserve to be free, especially those who have been pushed to the margins. And so when I say visibility equals possibility, it's not just a slogan, right? It echoes Black feminist ideas, and that it's political. My body is political. My existence is political. And it is me reclaiming my power by saying visibility equals possibility. So let's get into it. So today's question is, what values do I live by? And so I had to write this down, right? Because I didn't want to miss nothing. So for folks who don't know me, so let me go back. So first, I'm the founder and executive director of Dem Bois Inc. And I'm also the host of Dem Bois Podcast. So just a quick little shameless plug, right? So I had to write these down. And so for folks that know me, know that I am an even number person. So I do not like odd numbers. So I always have to, when I pick something up, I always got to pick something that's an even amount. It's really weird. It gets really, really weird. But anyway, so when I talk about what values I live by, I had to write this down because I didn't want to miss anything. And so at first I wrote down something and it was only 5 items. And I was like, oh, absolutely not. My values got to be even. So I wrote down an additional one. And the last one that I wrote down, I was like, I don't even know why this one wasn't first. And so as a matter of fact, I'm going to say this one first because this one should be first in my life. And so my first value that I live by is joy, integrity, accountability, community over ego, care, and rest. And so growing up, when you think about values, right, you think about what are your values as you were growing up, right? So it's things that were taught to you as a youth. And so my values were not my own. My values were more so instilled in me by my mother. And to be honest with you, I don't even think my mother had real values. Her values were driven by the church. So we were heavily in the church. My mom was super religious. And so a lot of the rules and the values that I learned growing up, which were harmful, because I was overweight, I was masculine, I was queer. So none of those values that are rooted in church, and I won't just say church, I'm gonna be more specific. I grew up in a Christian household, Church of God in Christ, to be honest. And not to be honest, but to be more specific. And so they had some deeply rooted values of things that I could and could not do. For one, as a female assigned at birth, and as a masculine female, as a queer person, there were so many things I couldn't do, including in church, I wasn't allowed to wear pants. So that's a whole nother topic. But it caused a lot of dysphoria because I did not want to wear skirts. But anyway, that's probably another video, another time, another day, because I can go really, really deep into that. If you would like me to make a video talking about that, my dysphoria of being a masculine, a center woman, but then having to wear dresses and skirts at church, I would love to share that. Just shoot in the comments below and like, hey, Shawn, make a video of that, and I will. And so I didn't really grow up on a clear set of values, right? And so most of the values that I learned were survival. So I had to learn how to survive in this house being a queer person. I had to learn how to survive in my household being overweight when that was frowned upon. And a lot of the values in my house were based on fear and based on control, right? And so as an adult, I had to unlearn some of those things. I had to unlearn probably 99.9% of those things. And which is really strange because as I was growing up, I always knew like something, not just in my queer identity, but I knew that some of the things, even if I can even remember memories as young as 5 of like thinking, yo, this ain't right. This is not how things should be. And I even remember telling my brothers, and my brothers are a few years younger than me, that my mom would like say some stuff. And then as soon as she would leave the room, I would correct it and say, you know what, that's not really true, right? I would always provoke thoughts of around values and what and try to instill in not just within myself but to spread it into my brothers of like, don't believe that shit, don't believe that hype or what mom is saying. It's not that I was trying to be a rebellious child, but I was also trying to not limit my belief and not limit my ways, and thank goodness I did that, right? Because I was able to unlearn some of those things rather quickly. And so it's a lot of those things that I had to learn. I learned as a child, and values that were instilled in me. I switched real quick. And so because I just knew that a lot of those things didn't fit me. They didn't fit for me. They were not for me. They were not meant for me. They were not created for people like me. And so I didn't want to hold on to them. Because they were causing harm. And so the moment I could get away from my mom, the moment I could get away from church, I was able to truly shift and learn true values that work for me. And so I'm going to say my first value is joy, right? And so when I think of joy, I think of feeling good in your body, feeling good in your spirit. And one of the reasons why I said that I wanted to put this one first, because if you remember from yesterday's video, yesterday's question was, hold on one second. Yesterday's question was, what are your go-to practices for mental health or emotional grounding? And so I talked a lot about my practices and a lot about joy. And so that's why it should be first. And I would like to say that joy was, out of all of the values that I hold on to now, joy was the hardest one to get to. And so that's why I want to put that one first. I put that one first because that one should be on the forefront of my mind and my thought and my process every day, is to learn how to love myself and learn how to find joy and to continue on the path of happiness and with joy ingrained into that, right? And so then the next one of my values, and this one value is one that I hold on to dearly. And when I say integrity, I'm talking about integrity. If I think of somebody that has integrity, I kind of like, if you ain't got integrity, you can't measure up to the type of integrity I have. And so integrity means, Webster dictionary meaning means to do things that you're supposed to be doing even when other people aren't watching. And that could be subjective, right? Because it's like, what are the things that you actually doing that you think that people not watching will want you to do? But it all depends on who you are performing for, who is not watching. So it's like, that could be subjective, but overall, integrity means doing the right things even when somebody is not looking, right? And so every day, this is something that I intentionally set out to do every day, is to align myself with my integrity. And so that is also aligning my actions with my beliefs. So if I don't believe in something, I'm not going to be doing it. And if I'm doing something, I believe in it, right? So it's interchangeable. I'm not going to do something that I don't believe in, and I'm going to do everything that I believe in. And so that's integrity and intertwined into my values and who I am as a person. And that's in everything that I do, right? Even as executive director of Dem Bois, like, I lead with integrity all the time. And I think it kind of goes back to, if folks listen to Dem Bois Podcast, one of the solo episodes in season 1, I talked about what my career goals were prior to becoming an executive director of Dem Bois and prior to his forming of the organization. And so I always wanted to get into law enforcement. So when we think of law enforcement, there's so many ideas of what we think of law enforcement. And so that was one of the reasons why I used to wake up every day on that journey. And obviously that didn't happen, right? But I wanted to have a different type of integrity from what people in my community would see. So let me rephrase that. I wanted to be the type of person in law enforcement that other folks want to see. in our communities. And so integrity was a big thing for me of doing what I'm supposed to do, even when other folks aren't watching. And so then I think about my next value that I live by, and that's accountability, right? And I, I'm a human being. I can't be perfect. There are things that I do that other folks might not agree with because I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect, right? But it's not about being perfect. When I think about accountability, it's about being honest. So there's a difference of being honest in what you do, and that kind of is connected to integrity, right? But it's also being honest, not just honest to others, but honest internally with yourself. So that's very important to me. And so then when I think of another value, I think of my other value is care. And so that also intertwines with joy, right? So if you care for yourself, if you care for others, so I care for myself and I care for others as I would care for myself. But I like to say that I care for others as they want to be cared for, right? And so that's intertwined with joy. And so when I take care of myself, when I take care of my folks, when I take care of my community, that brings me joy. And so that is deeply one of my values. And so then my other value I wrote down was community over ego. Community over ego. What does that mean, Shawn? So what that means is I am who I am because of the people around me. And so it means that if I care for myself in a way and I show up in certain ways, that should inspire the people who are in my life to show up in a certain way. And so I'm not only caring for myself, but I'm also caring for the people around me. And so it is reciprocal. It goes around, right? And so I don't lead with my ego. I lead with my integrity. I lead with my heart. I lead with my own personal experience. I lead in the ways that I would look for someone to lead something. And so community over ego. So my next one is my value is rest. Now this one, this one I need more of. And it's not just rest, but it's not just stopping what you're doing. It's like actual rest. You cannot show up for others if you ain't well rested. And I always say you can't pour into others from an empty cup. You also can't pour from others and from a half filled cup either, right? Because then if you pour out of your half filled cup into others, then what you got left? So this is what I like to think of it as. I want my cup to be full. Actually, I want my cup to be full and then overflowing. So I got the full cup. The overflowing, that's what I'm giving to others. And so, and if we know how liquid works, it once it starts to overflow, it just continues. Like everything is gonna start to keep coming out, right? You think of like putting a cup in the sink, you put the faucet over it and you just turn it on and you let the cup fill up and then it overflows. So the cup can never be overfilled. It's only a container, right? So it can only have cup. It can only have liquid up to the lid, to the rim, and that's it. Everything else is going to automatically come out. And so that part is what as long as if I can continue to keep my cup filled, because I get all of the other things that I need, right? Based on all the other values. So my cup is full and that liquid is just overflowing continuously. And that is the part that I am putting and giving into others that I care about and giving into my community, right? So I hope I didn't miss this one. So I did integrity, I did accountability, community over ego, rest and joy. One more. So that was only 5. One more, care. So care is not just caring for others, but caring for myself too, right? And that's connected to my rest. That's connected to my joy, right? And so when you think about values, you think about all of these things that you believe in, and they all feed each other, right? And once you can get it oiled like an oil machine, it's all gonna move how it's supposed to move, right? And so when I think about how these values show up in my life, all of these values, integrity, accountability, community over ego, care, rest, and joy, They show up in ways in how I lead them boys. They show up in ways of how I host Dem Bois Podcast. It shows up in my friendships, my boundaries, my healing work, and my therapy. It's the way it shows up, like the yesterday, how I talked about it shows up in the way that I care for my body, my mental health, and my family, chosen family, right? And so I am somebody asked me a while back a really, really good question of if I so for folks that don't know, if you haven't listened to Them Boys podcast, episode 3 of Them Boys podcast was titled Surviving Homelessness. And so I was homeless for houseless, unhoused for 2.5 years when I was a teenager, because I came out to my mother when I had just freshly turned 18. And my mother was like, "You got to get out." She wrote me a long eviction notice and put it on my bedroom door. I wish I had that letter still. Maybe I don't, because maybe I don't need to reflect on that, right? But it was like a 4-page letter, right? It had scriptures, it had just everything. I felt like she had literally vomited everything that she had towards me, every little anger or resentment she's had towards me over all the years came out on this letter. And so somebody asked me a very good question, and it was, if your mother, and so, so the question was, if your mother had not kicked you out and you lived with your mother now and you never moved out on your own, never had to survive on your own, do you think you would be the person that you are now? I think I had to really unpack that in therapy because it was such a good question. But I realized that I don't know the answer to that because that didn't happen, right? And I always think of being homeless. Once I grew and I went to therapy, I used to always think, and I had a hard time talking about it. I couldn't even talk about it right now without just crying. And so I always think of it as a blessing and a curse. It was a curse at the time, but it's a blessing that I realize now because it shaped who I am as a person, and I think it set up the precedence for the values that I hold today, right? Like integrity. You think of care. I didn't know how to care for nobody. I didn't even know how to care for myself because I grew up being uncared for. And when I say uncared for, I'm not saying emotionally uncared for. And so I think of, if I stayed there, who knows? I don't know if I would be the person that I am today. I will hope that I would be, but then who knows, right? I may have had to live a life that I was not proud of, or had to live a life where I wasn't authentically myself. And from the day I left my mother's house, I have been 100% authentic in my queerness, in my transness, and everything, right? And I talked about previously of moving through all the letters, the LGBTQ, right? I've moved through all the letters. And so I had pride, and I was open in every step that every identity that I was in every point of my life. And so I don't know how that would have landed if I had stayed in my mother's house. So I wrap up to say this. These are my values. And so I want to ask you, what are your values? What values do you live by? Are they your values, or are they values that somebody put upon you at one time in your life? And so how was it handed to you? Was it passed off? Was it something that you picked up? Was it something that you had to learn? Was it something that you got from chosen family or from watching in community? And so I want to know, what are the values that you live by? Just drop it in the comments. Let's talk about it. So thank you for tuning in to day 10 of my 30-day engagement. Once again, my name is Shawn Aaron, he, him, his, and I'll see you tomorrow.